Hi, my name is Kareem Al Ayubi. For the last couple of weeks, I was assigned to research and find information about tanks in the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was one of the most important wars in the history of the United States. It revolutionized weaponry used in wars and developed all the strategies used during a war. But all this technology resulted in very dramatic results on civilians. Because new weaponry was meant to kill more people, so a little over 2 million innocent civilians died during that war. Many countries started using tanks for the first time during wars, because after World War II, people started to realize that they are in need for an armored personal carrier for infantry, especially in the Vietnam War. Tanks were very basic then, but they made a huge impact on the results of the war. Some tanks, like this one, were so small that they can fit only 2 people in them. They were designed to be able to go through forests and in between small cracks in mountains. They weren't as expensive and as deadly as other big tanks. Tanks were pretty expensive too. During the Vietnam War, a US Army M48 Patton, like the one you can see in the picture, averaged around $200,000. Those tanks were all steel and had no computers. They built around 12,000 of them. Many of the tanks built in the era between 1950 and 1965 were built in the United States by General Motors. Ford and Cadillac were the main providers for engines and parts for those tanks. They built more than 500,000 tanks in less than 10 years. Tanks weren't easy to build and took a lot of time because all parts were handmade. For example, this is one of the headquarters for General Motors in the year 1955. In the late 1930s, the U.S. military invited 165 companies to vote for the new military vehicle to replace the Ford T model. They voted for the Jeep model because it can run on road 60 miles per hour, climb a 40-degree slope. It could even run underwater with special attachments for exhaust and air intake. So the U.S. Army ordered thousands of these vehicles because it was sufficient and a lot faster than any other older model. Some companies started developing new tanks that are lighter and faster than previous ones. For example, the M24 Chaffee, the one you can see in the picture. It was first developed in the year 1943. Besides its powerful engine, the M24 can fit 5 people in its light body.
Violence flaring, bullets loading. You're old enough to kill, but not for voting. You don't believe in war, but what's that gun you're toting? And even the Jordan River has bodies floating. But you tell me over and over and over again.
Machine guns on tanks started to develop during the Vietnam War era. Many tank building companies focused to develop the machine guns to make them more accurate and more effective on the battlefield. They were used to defend the tanks from aircrafts. Some tanks, like the M24, had 4 guns on it. 2 guns were for self-defense against soldiers on ground, and the other 2 were anti-crowd guns. So, I just told you guys some information about tanks' effects during the Vietnam War and how they were developed during that era. I want to leave you guys with this cartoon, and I hope you enjoyed this movie and learned some new information about that time in our history.